Calum Scott stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage in 2015. No one expected the shy, soft-spoken office worker to become one of the most powerful voices of the decade. His audition, Simon Cowell hitting the golden buzzer, the crowd erupting, and Calum breaking down in tears became one of the most iconic moments in the show's history. But behind that unforgettable performance, behind the soaring vocals and worldwide success, lies a story few people know. A story of heartbreak, insecurity, rejection, and the crushing weight of overnight fame that nearly destroyed him. Because after the confetti fell, and the world embraced his voice, Calum Scott disappeared from the spotlight for months. Rumors spread. Was he struggling with his mental health? Had fame become too much? Why did the singer with one of the most emotional voices suddenly go silent? And when he returned, he revealed something deeply personal, something that explained everything. From painful childhood memories to the pressure of representing millions who saw themselves in him, Calum faced battles that no viewer ever saw on television. Today, years after his golden buzzer moment, Calum Scott's life has taken a turn no one expected. And the truth behind his journey, his struggles, his transformation, and the heartbreaking moments that shaped him might just change the way you see him forever. Calum Scott's Britain's Got Talent journey began with nerves so intense that he almost didn't walk onto the stage. Before auditioning, he had spent years battling low confidence, rejection, and the fear that he simply wasn't good enough. He had a small office job, a quiet daily routine, and a dream that felt too big to chase. His sister Jade had been the one to push him. In fact, she auditioned first, but was rejected harshly by the judges. That moment nearly sent Calum home. But something inside him whispered that if he didn't try now, he might never try at all. When Calum stepped onto the stage, his hands were shaking. But the moment he sang the first line of "Dancing on My Own," everything changed. His voice, raw, trembling, emotional, captivated the room instantly. Simon Cowell watched closely, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. By the time Calum reached the chorus, the crowd was erupting. People in the audience were crying, and even the judges looked stunned. In one of the show's most unforgettable moments, Simon hit the golden buzzer. Confetti fell, Calum covered his face, and his life changed in an instant. But what the audience didn't see was the overwhelming pressure that followed. Calum had gone from anonymity to global attention overnight. Millions watched his audition. News outlets covered his story. Record labels began calling. Yet behind the scenes, Calum was struggling to adjust. He had never been trained for fame, interviews, or constant public scrutiny. And because his audition performance had been so emotional and vulnerable, people instantly felt a personal connection to him. That connection, while beautiful, also brought a weight he hadn't expected. After the show ended, Calum didn't win the season, but he didn't need to. His audition became one of the most viewed Britain's Got Talent videos of all time. Still, once the cameras stopped rolling, Calum retreated from the public eye. He later explained that he needed time to process everything. The sudden shift from a quiet life to worldwide fame caused anxiety, self-doubt, and a fear of disappointing the people who believed in him. For months, he stayed low profile. No music releases. No major announcements. Fans wondered what had happened. Was he overwhelmed? Was he quitting music? Why was the golden buzzer star suddenly silent? The truth was far more complicated. Calum was fighting an internal battle, one rooted in insecurities he had carried since childhood. Growing up, he had never felt comfortable in his own skin. He struggled with acceptance, identity, and the pressure to hide parts of himself. As a teenager, he was bullied, isolated, and left feeling like he would never truly belong anywhere. Even as an adult, those scars hadn't fully healed. Becoming famous didn't erase those insecurities, it magnified them. Every comment, every interview, every performance became a test of his emotional resilience. Calum later admitted that he felt terrified of letting people down. The song that made him famous was about loneliness, heartbreak, and longing, and many fans saw themselves in that pain. Calum suddenly found himself carrying the expectations of people who said his music helped them survive their darkest days. During those silent months, he did something important. He began working on himself. He sought guidance, surrounded himself with supportive people, and slowly started writing music that reflected his truth. This was the period where Calum transformed from a reality TV contestant into a true artist, an artist ready to tell his real story. And when he finally returned, he didn't come back with a simple cover. He came back with original music, a renewed sense of purpose, and a message that would reach millions around the world. Calum Scott's life changed almost overnight after his unforgettable audition went viral. But what the public didn't see was how intensely he struggled to adjust to the pressure that came with his sudden fame. One moment, he was a local office worker singing in small venues for friends and family. The next, he was being recognized on the street, contacted by major media outlets, and pushed into the spotlight in a way he had never prepared for. While millions celebrated his golden buzzer moment, Calum privately felt the weight of expectations tightening around him. Producers wanted more songs, fans demanded updates, and the industry saw him as a new product to shape and sell. The excitement was real, but so was the fear that he might not be able to live up to the viral success he had accidentally created. Behind the scenes, the pressure was relentless. Calum wasn't just expected to sing. He was expected to prove himself worthy of the buzz. People questioned whether he was a one-hit wonder, whether he could create original music that matched the emotional power of his audition, and whether he had the personality to survive in a business known for its brutal pace. The truth is, Calum struggled deeply with self-confidence during this period. Even after his emotional performance moved millions, he wasn't fully sure he deserved the praise. Interviews and public appearances were overwhelming for someone who had never been trained to handle the spotlight. And each new step forward came with moments of private doubt, as if the pressure of fame wasn't enough. Calum also faced criticism that cut deeper than most people knew. Some viewers questioned his background, his voice, and even his personal life, things that should have never been up for debate. The comments he saw online often left him in tears. For an artist whose voice came from a place of vulnerability, the harshness of fame was emotionally draining. But what made this period so difficult was that Calum rarely expressed how much he was struggling. Instead, he tried to smile through interviews, thank fans graciously, and appear strong even when he wasn't. This emotional battle was unseen by the world. But it shaped the next chapter of his career. During this challenging time, Calum turned to music as a form of therapy. While writing his debut album, he poured every doubt, fear, and heartbreak into lyrics that spoke to both his pain and his hope. Songs like Dancing on My Own and You Are the Reason came from a place of emotional honesty that few new artists are brave enough to share. Each track was a reflection of his journey, from feeling invisible to suddenly being recognized worldwide, from hiding his emotions to expressing them freely through music. What his fans didn't know was that many of these songs were written late at night, often during moments when Calum felt overwhelmed by fame's darker side. But even as he worked tirelessly on new music, Calum faced another unexpected challenge: the isolation that often comes with success. Friends treated him differently. Strangers approached him everywhere he went, and his once normal life disappeared almost instantly. While performing on stage made him feel alive, the moments after the spotlight dimmed were sometimes the hardest. He often felt alone, unsure of who he could trust or how to balance his rising career with the personal stability he desperately needed. By the time Calum's music began topping charts around the world, he had already gone through a silent emotional transformation. Fame didn't break him, but it did force him to grow faster than he ever imagined. He learned to navigate criticism, to trust his own voice, and to slowly become comfortable with the idea that he deserved the success he had earned. Yet even as he achieved milestone after milestone, the question remained: how long could he keep this pace going without something eventually giving way? That question would define the next phase of his journey. As Calum Scott's career skyrocketed internationally, the pressure that had quietly brewed in the background finally began to take a toll on him. His songs were topping charts in countries he had never visited. His voice was playing on radios around the world, and he was suddenly being labeled as one of the most emotional vocalists of his generation. But what the public celebrated, Calum struggled to process. He found himself traveling constantly, performing non-stop, and trying to meet expectations that seemed to grow larger with every new achievement. Behind the applause and the bright stage lights, Calum was quietly unraveling. There came a point when the excitement of fame no longer outweighed the emotional and physical exhaustion he was experiencing. Touring, rehearsals, interviews, promotional shoots, it all became a blur of commitments he barely had the energy to keep up with. For someone who naturally dealt with anxiety, the chaos of the entertainment industry pushed him to his limits. On the surface, he looked composed and grateful. But privately, Calum was dealing with intense self-doubt, loneliness, and a feeling that he was losing control of his own life. His mental health began to decline in ways even he didn't fully recognize at first. As the years went on, the pressure built until it reached a breaking point. Calum started experiencing panic attacks before performances, something he never expected to happen to him. The thought of disappointing his fans terrified him. He felt the weight of millions of expectations on his shoulders, and that fear sometimes made it hard for him to even step onto the stage. In interviews years later, Calum admitted he didn't always feel strong enough to handle fame, even though he tried desperately to appear confident. The reality was that he was burning out, and the people closest to him began noticing the change in his behavior. At his lowest, Calum questioned whether he belonged in the music industry at all. He wondered if he should step away, if the emotional toll was worth the success, and whether he could ever truly be himself under the microscope of fame. He felt the heaviness of being misunderstood, of being judged for anything he said or did, and of constantly worrying about doing the wrong thing. The loneliness that comes with being a public figure began to overshadow the joy he used to feel when creating music. For the first time in his career, Calum feared that he might lose himself completely, but everything changed when he reached what he described as a quiet turning point. It wasn't dramatic or loud, it was a moment of stillness. Calum realized that if he didn't take control of his mental health, fame would destroy the very passion that had brought him into music. He started speaking with professionals, something he had long avoided out of fear of looking weak. He reached out to close friends, opening up about his struggles instead of hiding them. And most importantly, he allowed himself to step back and breathe for the first time in years. This shift became the foundation of a new chapter in Calum's life. He learned to set boundaries, to say no when he needed rest, and to stop trying to please every voice around him. His confidence slowly began to rebuild, not from external validation, but from the realization that he had survived some of the darkest moments of his journey. Instead of letting fame define him, he started redefining what kind of artist and person he wanted to be. This internal transformation would become the emotional core of his next wave of music. During this period of healing, Calum discovered something powerful. Vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was his greatest strength. He began writing again, and this time his lyrics were more honest, more thoughtful, and deeper than anything he had created before. His personal struggles became the inspiration behind songs that would eventually resonate with millions of fans, who had experienced similar emotional battles.
In learning how to heal himself,
Calum unexpectedly became a voice of comfort for others. That transformation, quiet, painful, and profound, became the turning point that saved him. But the world didn't know yet that another challenge was waiting for him in the years to come. One that would test everything he had rebuilt. After rebuilding his confidence and redefining his place in the music industry, Calum Scott entered what many fans believed was the happiest and most stable era of his life. His music was stronger than ever. His voice carried more emotion than it ever had, and he openly embraced the role of being a global ambassador for emotional honesty. Yet, despite the calm that surrounded him on the outside, Calum was about to face another wave of challenges, ones far more personal and far more unexpected than anything fame had thrown at him before. As the world transitioned into the early 2020s, Calum found himself dealing with the emotional aftermath of everything he had been through. The pressure of songwriting, traveling, connecting with fans, and living life as a public figure didn't vanish just because he had learned to cope better. Some days he felt strong and fulfilled. Other days, the old feelings of anxiety crept back unexpectedly, reminding him that healing wasn't a straight path, it was a lifelong journey. Those closest to him noticed he carried a quiet sadness at times, a kind of emotional exhaustion that comes from spending years pushing through the pain instead of completely resting from it. During this period, Calum began reflecting on the sacrifices he had made for his career. He missed time with loved ones, milestones with family, and simple moments of peace that he didn't realize he needed until they were gone. He also struggled deeply with the fear of disappointing people, a fear that had followed him from his days working a regular job long before. Even when he was praised, awarded or supported by fans, Calum often wrestled with a lingering sense of unworthiness. The more successful he became, the more he questioned whether he had truly earned it. Yet, despite the emotional challenges, Calum continued making music that touched hearts around the world. His fan base grew more loyal with each passing year, especially because he was so open about his mental health journey. Instead of hiding behind a perfectly curated image, he used his struggles to uplift others. People from all walks of life wrote to him, thanking him for helping them through their darkest moments. In these messages, Calum found a reminder of why he began singing in the first place: to make people feel understood. But what fans didn't know was that Calum was also battling a quiet grief, one that came from a personal heartbreak he rarely spoke about publicly. A significant relationship in his life came to an end, leaving him devastated and emotionally drained. For someone who already carried deep sensitivity, the breakup shook him more than expected. It brought back feelings of loneliness he thought he had overcome, and he spent months trying to rebuild himself emotionally. He later channeled this pain into his songwriting, producing some of the rawest and most vulnerable lyrics of his career. In the midst of all this, Calum also faced the pressure of expectations for his next musical chapter. People wanted another global hit, another emotional anthem, another "You Are the Reason" or "Dancing on My Own." But Calum knew that forcing creativity would only push him backward. Instead, he focused on taking slow, meaningful steps, writing from the heart rather than from pressure. He began exploring deeper themes, darker emotions, and more complex stories that reflected who he was becoming as a person. By 2025, Calum Scott had transformed into an artist who wasn't defined by a reality show anymore. He was defined by resilience. He was defined by honesty, authenticity, and the courage to face the darkest parts of himself without turning away. His story became a reminder that fame doesn't protect someone from pain. It doesn't erase fear. It doesn't make someone immune to heartbreak. What fame can do, however, is amplify one's voice, and Calum chose to use his voice for healing. Today, he continues to grow, evolve, and find balance. He still faces emotional challenges, but he no longer hides from them. Instead, he turns them into music that resonates with millions. He has learned that vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a gift. And that gift has allowed Calum Scott to carve out a place in the world where his authenticity shines brighter than any stage light. His journey is far from over. But one thing is certain: Calum Scott didn't just survive the pressures of fame. He learned how to live with them, grow from them, and transform them into something beautiful.